G'day, I'm DK.
And I'm Ardeet.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Two Ticks Town Talk, a segment from the Australia Talks podcast.
Yeah, this is one of our favourite parts of bringing the podcast to you, our listeners.
So please enjoy this segment from the regular podcast.
I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the desert, fair man. I've breathed the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
All right, this week's Two Ticks Town Talk, we're going to the South Australian town of Tantanoola to learn about a cryptid that was terrorizing the town in the late 1800s and possibly might still be out there today. So Tantanoola is a town in the regional southeast of South Australia, approximately 30 k's northwest of Mount Gambier, right near the border of Victoria. It's 15 k's from the beach, so you'd call it coastal, but it's not exactly a beach town. And there's a very large Lake Bonnie that sits between the town and the ocean. Lake Bonnie's like a really, it's sort of cigar-shaped. But this isn't a Two Ticks Lake Talk, so enough about the lake, all right? Don't get me too excited about the lake. A town was proclaimed at its current location in 1879, as that same year the beachport to Mount Gambier railway line was opened, which caused a bit of controversy as it went straight down the middle of the town, literally cutting the town in half from north to south. So, look, to be fair, though, there wasn't much of a town there at the time. I think you could have moved some of the houses, but anyway. The town was derived from the local Aboriginal word Tantanoola, which means like boxwood or brushwood hill or camp. Also, it's been suggested that it is used to describe a place where the women come to meet. Originally, the town was named Lucyton by Governor Jervis after his daughter, Lucy Caroline, in 10th of July, 1879. But I can't do that, mate. You can't just name a town after your daughter. So it was changed by Governor Robinson to Tantanoola in the 4th of October, 1888. But what we care about, the story that I want to tell you begins in 1891. A mysterious animal was on the prowl in the local area. And it all started when Aboriginal shearers working on grazier's John Cameron's property at an area called German Creek, which is just south of the town. They came running up to him one night, scared by a strange wild animal that they said didn't belong in Australia. The beast, they said, had so frightened their dogs that the mutts were cowering in their huts. The grazier basically told them to piss off, and he didn't really care too much, telling stories, he reckoned, until the very next night when it happened again. This time, John Cameron found tracks, and while they were looking, they looked like a dog. They were much, much larger, measuring about 10 centimeters across, much larger than any dog Cameron had seen. 9 months later, also at German Creek, sheep station manager John Livingston was told by an Aborigine of a strange animal stalking the property. Sightings seemed to die off for a while until December 1892 in the town itself. Walter Taylor and his wife were driving home in their horse buggy when they saw a strange animal slinking across the road ahead. The beast was brown with stripes, about 1/2 meter tall and almost 1 meter long, with a long sweeping tail that brought its length to about 1.5 meters. The animal, which he swore wasn't a dingo, disappeared into a stand of thick tea tree bush. Several property owners also came forward to report finding sheep that had been devoured, leaving only bloodied skin and bones that had been licked clean. And a man named Long said he'd found one of his bullocks had flesh eaten from its back as if something had attacked it in the night. The phantom predator was soon dubbed the Tantanoola tiger by the newspapers all across Australia. So this story went nationwide. Everybody was very, very interested in what was going on. Locals were worried that it was only a matter of time before the enemy of their flock becomes a man-eater. And as such, they even organized groups to escort children to and from school because they were so terrified that this tiger would come and devour their children. There was only one thing to do, of course, in situations like this. You gather the men and the rifles, mount a search party, and find and slay this beast. This was in mid-May 1893. Property manager John Livingston, who believed that the sheep station he managed was at the center of the tiger's activity, convinced nearly 24 men to join him in the search of the German Creek area. He led them into a thicket of tea tree bush, and they broke into small groups and took up positions all around this patch, while riflemen were posted at strategic points, waiting for the tiger to emerge and to shoot it dead. The men walked into the tea tree thicket from the south and beat the grass from the north, shouting and yelling to scare anything towards the rifles. A dog with one of the groups got the scent of something and ran into the thicket. Then it jumped back in a fright. There was something dark moving in the bushes. The excited hunters closed in. They plowed through the thicket, and what they found was a black swan sitting on its nest, squawking at them, very, very angry about what was happening. Another group of men set a small fire to scare the tiger out of hiding, thinking, we'll smoke him out. But all they found was wallabies, bounded ahead of the men and the flame, but nothing else came out, tried to escape. Arriving back in town, the search was declared a failure. The Border Watch newspaper, the local newspaper, their correspondent wrote, quote, "It is not probable that another hunt will be organized till some further evidence of the strange animal in the locality is forthcoming." It's great. Which is a very polite way of saying, you're all idiots. But something was still out there killing livestock, and sightings did continue. In September 1893, a farmer, William Johns of Vulcan Park, was woken at 2 a.m. by his dogs and chickens going crazy. He found very large paw prints, about 11 centimeters across, and a policeman the next day took a plaster cast, which he sent to Adelaide Zoo. The zoologist compared those with a tiger and a St. Bernard and found that whatever was stalking the Tantanoola countryside wasn't feline, but in fact canine. Then in October, look, it's just a bloody paw print, so I don't know how much they can tell from that, but still. In October 1893, the nightmare appeared to be over. The beast was dead, and it wasn't feline or canine, but it was porcine. A man from the town of Maleficent, which is just to the north of Tantanoola, named Kenny Matheson. He had succeeded in poisoning an absolutely huge feral pig that he reckoned had killed 200 of his sheep on his property alone that year. Oh. It had even completely skinned one of his horses from chest to the knee. And Mr. Matheson said that the pig had hidden and been living in tea tree scrub by day and then hunted the livestock by night. And after many unsuccessful attempts to shoot and poison the beast, he finally got it by mixing a paste of flour, sugar, and phosphorus and pouring that over a dead sheep. The boar, he said, was more than 2.7 meters long from snout to tail and had sharp 9-inch tusks. He sent
Wow.
absolutely huge. He sent these tusks of the boar to the Express and Telegraph newspaper, along with a letter describing how he had killed the monster. He wrote, quote, "I feel quite satisfied that in killing this pig, I have killed the tiger that was doing so much damage to my sheep and wreak cattle and havoc in the district of Tantanoola." End quote. The newspaper basically reckoned he was right. They said it appears as though Mr. Matheson has achieved the killing of the Tantanoola tiger. Except that didn't explain the paw prints. As you can probably tell, a pig's hoof is very distinctly different from
just a bit.
feline or canine paw prints. You know, dogs and cats, fairly similar sort of paw print, certainly different from a pig's hoof. And Mr. Matheson's victory didn't stop the killing that was going on, the sheep and the leaving the big paw prints around the town. So he did solve a mystery. It's just, it wasn't the one that we were after. In August 1894, John Livingston's 17-year-old nephew, Donald Smith, was riding in German Creek property near Lake Bonny when he noticed a flock of sheep in distress. Investigating, he saw at a distance of only a few yards away, a large animal walking firmly towards the tea tree scrub with a full-blown sheep struggling in its mouth.
Oh.
Smith had never seen a tiger, but he felt sure that he was now looking at one. He said it stood about 75 centimeters off the ground and was about 1.3 meters long and had dull stripes all over its brown body and much more distinctive stripes on its head and face.
Huh.
Absolutely terrified, Smith rode to his uncle's house, and John Livingston sent him to the Mount Gambier police station to demand that they do something. The inspector in charge believed the claim and dispatched 2 mounted constables and a black tracker to search for the tiger. Now, I should explain, because this sounds pretty racist, but black trackers were the term given to, it's a historical term for an Aboriginal person who was employed as a tracking expert. So it wasn't specifically derogatory, but obviously this day and age, we wouldn't really call them that, but this is how they are described in the history of this. These men returned to the teacher stands and spent a day basically beating back bush, trying to look through the scrub. And while the search basically the previous year had turned up nothing, this one did yield something tangible near the spot where Donald Smith had seen what he described as the tiger. The soil showed claw marks as evidence of struggle, probably with the sheep. Following the tracks, the policeman and the black tracker found small tufts of bloodied wool hung up on ferns, leading them to believe that the beast had carried the sheep in this direction. They also found very large paw prints measuring 13 centimeters wide.
Oh, and the Tantanoola tiger's getting bigger.
It's getting bigger. And deep enough to suggest that the animal was quite heavy. Through 1895, there were continued sightings of the Tantanoola tiger every month or so, but they basically didn't find anything, any more significant evidence. In response, John Livingston sent 2 men and a black tracker to stake out the area for a week, thinking, you know, if we camp out here waiting for the beast, surely something will come along. But they weren't the only ones doing this. Thomas Donovan from Nelson on the Glenelg River was a crack shot who'd spent many years hunting in the bush. Likes to think of himself as a bit of a trophy hunter, really. Recently, he had been on the prowl for the tiger in the area, but after 2 sightings by reliable witnesses on an estate near Mount Salt, Donovan and his partner, William Taylor, arrived in the area on the 21st of August, 1895. They consulted the estate manager, a Mr. R.G. Watson, and told him that they'd planned to spend a week or so in search of the beast. Mr. Watson told them to start their hunt on the range about 6.5 kilometres west of Mount Salt, where they had seen the beast. So Donovan and Taylor struck out, camping the night about halfway from their destination. They got an early start the next morning and hiked to the appointed spot just before dawn. And the sun had barely cracked over the horizon when the men saw something standing out of the ordinary. About 300 metres away across the plain, a herd of sheep was clearly in distress, disturbed by a particularly large animal. The hunters were too far away to see it clearly, but at this distance, it didn't look like a tiger. It looked like a really big dog. Whatever it was, the beast was singling out sheep and attacking them. So the men crept closer until they were about 90 metres away, and as they watched, the beast knocked a sheep over and sat over it on its haunches. Seizing the opportunity, Donovan raised his Winchester rifle, took steady aim, and fired. The beast was hit hard, but that didn't stop it. It didn't drop. It ran. It bolted as fast as it could, with Donovan and Watson chasing it. After almost 200 metres, the creature finally tumbled and fell onto the earth, where Donovan and Taylor slowly approached cautiously, and they found the dying animal. Like, to be fair, you don't want to get too close to whatever this thing was. The bullet had entered just below the right shoulder blade, piercing the heart and exited through the ribs on the left side. So, an absolutely fantastic shot. What they saw dead in front of them wasn't a tiger. It looked like a male dog, but no breed of dog that they'd ever seen before. Just over 2 p.m., Thomas Donovan arrived in Mount Gambier with the body and immediately handed it over to a taxidermist named Mr. Marks. Dozens of people crowded around the taxidermist's shop, hoping to get a glimpse at the process and the beast. Everybody speculated on what it was. It was too big for a dingo, maybe a dingo crossbred with a larger dog. Mr. Marks and several others who'd been to Germany and other parts of Europe declared that it was neither. They agreed that it was some sort of European wolf. Another gent suggested it might have been a Syrian wolf. It stood close to 91 centimetres tall and was nearly 1.5 metres from snout to tail. The beast had a wolf-like head. It was 25 centimetres from the back of its skull to its nose and 33 centimetres from ear tip to ear tip. Its teeth were almost 2.5 centimetres long. The fur was dark brown along the back, and its tail and fawn had grey on its head, sides, belly, and flanks, while its powerful legs were like a yellowy colour. The paws more closely resembled those of a wolf than a dog and made a wide 11-centimetre track, marrying up with the prints that had been cast in 1893 at Mr. John's yard in Tantanoola. All evidence suggested that this was definitely the tiger that they had all been hunting. By Thursday night, Thomas Donovan had received 8 or 9 telegrams from Adelaide asking how much that they wanted for the wolf, for the carcass. But he decided he would keep it for himself. He charged more than 400 people 1 shilling each to gaze at the animal. And he'd soon take it to the Adelaide Zoo.
Not?
Yeah, why not? He took it to the Adelaide Zoo, and it would be on display for years in his hometown of Nelson. In those first few days after he'd shot the wolf, some who'd been the most vocal believers of a beast roaming the countryside, now, of course, they didn't believe that this was the creature. Of course, it can't be that. It's a giant tiger. Yeah. John Livingston, he wasn't satisfied. He said that this was not the same animal as described by so many witnesses. Mr. Unger, a witness who had followed the creature previously, was absolutely sure that it was not the same animal. So too was Mr. Houston, who'd seen it just a few weeks prior. However, Mr. McClay, who had spotted it in that area, reckoned it was the same beast, as did young Mr. Donald Smith. So, jury's out on this. The town's paper, the Border Watch, sided with both sides, printing, quote, "However frightened one might be at it, it seems inconceivable that the area of the idea of a tiger should come to mind. But then they also said it is highly improbable that two such animals as a wolf and a tiger should be roaming in the same locality of this district. So, they were of no help. How things
still got them clicks.
Yeah, how things haven't changed, right? Unless, of course, what some witnesses had seen was possibly a different creature, perhaps a thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger believed to be extinct on the mainland by this time. At this time, the Tasmanian tiger was still alive, well, not well, but it was alive in Tasmania, and it's not inconceivable to think that there were at least a few still on the mainland. Of course, how a wolf did end up in South Australia is another question altogether. One theory was that it had survived on a shipwreck on the rugged coastline. That doesn't really explain why a wolf was on a ship. Though another offered by the Adelaide Zoo's director was that it was a half-breed or a crossbreed wolf that had escaped from a Victorian zoo, where several such specimens had once been kept, which I think is probably the most likely explanation. It might have been stuffed, but the Tantanoola tiger was still on the prowl, apparently. On the very same day, though the wolf was first examined, a young man named Montz, working for Mrs. Wells on the range between Tantanoola and the coast, said he saw the creature in broad daylight. The animal was, as he said, unquestionably a tiger and not a wolf or a dog. But, youths are prone to exaggeration and making up stories. In the next few years, the Tantanoola tiger would be repeatedly seen in the district, but gradually memory of the tiger began to fade, and by the turn of the century, basically, it was revived only by a handful of sightings. And, there were other Tantanoola tiger sightings in Victoria and even as far north as New South Wales. So it very much became a bit of a folklore, the cryptid sort of tale. But interestingly, in 1962, the tale of the Tantanoola tiger was revived when across the Victorian border in the tiny town of Ozinkadook, local inhabitants swore that they had seen a Tasmanian tiger. Thylacine reports continued in early 1968. Walkabout magazine, they did a special investigation speaking to people in the coastal southeastern South Australia and northwestern Victoria who swore that they'd seen a thylacine. The reports said more than 100 people had reported the creature, including a busload of people who had all said that they had seen alongside their bus. Or was it a case of shared hallucination? In the 50 years since that article, though, the sightings of thylacines continue in southeastern South Australia, with the most recent cluster of sightings only a few years ago, including several captured on intriguing, if not conclusive, videos. But there's one place you can be assured of seeing the creature that was shot by Thomas Donovan in 1895. And that's at the Tantanoola Tiger Hotel, where the taxidermied beast still holds pride of place in its glass case. And I can tell you, it doesn't look as vicious or exciting as I'm sure you probably think it would be. Look, it's a taxidermied dog from 1895. I think you can imagine how well it's held up all these years. But it's still there and you can still see it. Today, in the town of Tantanoola, the local industries include a Kimberly-Clark pulp and paper manufacturing facility, but broadly speaking, it's rural farming area, native flower and herb farming as well. It is a quiet little town with a very interesting part of Australian cryptid history. And of course, if you believe, the tiger is still out there to this day.
Very interesting. I have not heard of the Tantanoola tiger before.
What do you reckon?
I quite like stories like that. Look, what do I reckon? I reckon that it's quite conceivable there was a few thylacines still hanging around for still hanging around for a while from the time that they were declared extinct. You can't say that, well, we know that we've got all of them. And I think it's also possible that there was a dog bred with a bigger animal, or a wolf, or whether it's a wolf or whether it's something big, who knows? But I think it's quite possible to have the two of them actually together. So I think it's reasonable to say that people could have seen a thylacine, and that there was a large dog actually taking off the sheep, because once people's attention is heightened, they're on the lookout for things. And also there is the thing of the usual the sort of what would you say, wanting to see this stuff, so you convince yourself that you've seen it. But it sounds like there was enough reports that they saw something big doing damage. So look, I tend to have a credibility score on that being actually something, possibly the one that was captured. I'd put that around about the 67 to 77% credibility. What about you?
Yeah, I think I love stories like this. I love cryptids. Like, they're just I just love them so much. This local mystery, this creature in the night, I think a lot of people do like them. There's this like folklore thing of human culture all around the world where we just kind of like latch on to these stories. And I think you're probably right. I think it's probably a combination of, well, they definitely shot whatever this wolf creature was. And looking at the photos of the taxidermied specimen, it does look like a wolf, but it also looks kind of doggish. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was kind of like, either a throwback of a wild wolf with some sort of deformity that's just got huge. A wild dog that's just got huge, or some sort of crossbreed between a wolf that's been either accidentally or intentionally released into the wild. Because let's remember, this is the 1890s. People were pretty frivolous with animals back then. We'll just let it go into the wild and stuff like that. So,
because they've definitely got a taxidermy carcass.
Yes, and it does look like a very large dog / wolf creature, right? So Clearly that was killing sheep in the area. Obviously, it was found in the sort of vicinity of where all these other sightings were done. But what's interesting is it's like, sort of broadly speaking, its shape matches, but it doesn't have stripes on it. It's not a tiger. And that was the distinctive sort of idea, is this, that it has these stripes. But also there's a part of me, knowing a bit about human psychology, we do have a tendency to exaggerate stories and kind of false memories and things like that. There was a tiger that reportedly had escaped from a zoo in years previously. And so I do wonder if people were kind of primed to be looking for a creature like this. Yeah. Even if it was just a rumor, that can definitely spread, and you see a thing and you go, oh, that was I saw the tiger and all of this. And very quickly hysteria can kind of take over. So look, and us modern people are no different. Quite
exactly.
Frankly. So is what Donovan shot, and the thing is as well is there is a bunch of books written about this. It's like an ongoing mystery. There's so much to dive into this story, and I've given you like the short version. We may come back and visit this area in the future for another Two Ticks Town talk, because there's another couple of crazy things that went on in this area a little bit after this, as well as there's some interesting geography. So I may do a part 2, but I don't know when. I'm not committing to it yet, but I think I might do some more like cryptids if we can find them and those sorts of things, because
I would like that.
It is quite fun to sort of jump into these local folklores and all of those sorts of things. And look, I'm a bit of a believer. I definitely think there is some thylacine, some Tasmanian tigers that have avoided capture, I guess, or proper video. Yeah, like they're definitely, and I think it's a fool's errand to say, nah, they're all dead. It's like, well, there could have been a little enclave floating around there for a while, and maybe that's what people are seeing. I'm not sure, but, I choose to believe.
Yeah. Same here. Obviously by my credibility score, I'm on the belief side.